Hello everybody, it has been quite some time since I've gone live last, and I do apologize for that. Life does seem to get in the way quite a bit. But I do want to let everyone know that when I said I was going to run for president in 2024 back in 2017, I absolutely meant that. And part of the reason why we're doing this live stream now is because we're going to talk about the fourth debate that is beginning here soon. I am going to be watching it off of the screen here, and we'll be hearing it in the background as this goes on. It looks like it's already starting to get geared up. I'm watching it on News Nation Live. So if you go to newsnationnow.com/news-nation-live, you'll be able to watch the debate live with me as well. The other reason why we're going to watch it together is because I am going to answer the debate questions. I know I am not on the debate, but that is largely due to a lack of platform and national awareness, which we are working on. In fact, I am hopefully going to be on a few radio shows this week, and hopefully that builds into a very strong and powerful campaign from that point forward with earned media. So without further ado, please like, share, get the word out there that we are live, and we will go ahead and get this thing started.
Is everything.
So it looks like
It must be earned every day.
looks like it is started.
In the truth of our
I found it interesting that Chris Cuomo is on News Nation Live now.
stories we tell,
Kind of shows where his colors lie.
giving greater meaning to the events
This is the true humanitarian crisis.
that shape our history, our country, our lives.
I can promise News Nation's not going anywhere.
News Nation, built upon a reputation
News Nation
To be in my broadcast.
for honest, unbiased
Not sure how that
I
works.
belong to one party, the American Party.
reporting with integrity, perspective, and experience.
Yeah, I don't know about putting people on camera. I'm not sure how that works, especially since I'm doing it from my phone.
News Nation.
But thank you for joining.
News for all America.
All right, this is it. You can tell the red's on my face.
All right, thank you very much for joining us here. The big moment, the last chance for this woman and three men who want to be your president to make the case to you before the holy days as to why they have the goods. Thank you for joining us here at News Nation. We're very excited to be able to give you politics the way it should be delivered, which is a debate that is about disagreement, but with decency. That's focused not on little discrete issues that only matter to the establishment, but about the issues that are a part of your life and your family's concerns every day. That's what we're hoping you take from this tonight, and then you get to make your own reasoned decisions. Now, after the debate, we will be back with the best in the business who have been there before to see who made the right points, who made a difference for themselves, and who did not. So now, stay tuned at the University of Alabama. History is about to be made.
And I will also be doing an aftermath kind of debate. And when they ask the question, I'm going to go ahead and mute what is being shared or when the other candidates are answering while I'm giving my answer.
But on this night, the final showdown of the year moves to a new stage on America's newest cable news network. 40 days before the Iowa caucuses, millions of votes are still up for grabs. And 4 candidates are fighting for every last one of them. Who could catch fire and shock the political
5
world?
candidates.
2024 is do or die for us. We're not getting a mulligan on this.
Governor Ron DeSantis.
We have to have a new generational leader.
Former Ambassador Nikki Haley.
You're either pro-American or you're anti-American. That is the choice we face.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
We deserve better character in the White House.
Former Governor Chris Christie. Live on News Nation. News for all America. The lights are on. The field is set. It's game day in Alabama. And who knows what the tide will roll in.
Jeez. Who knows what the tide will roll in?
Debate of the year, live from the University of Alabama. I'm Megyn Kelly, host of the Megyn Kelly Show podcast on SiriusXM.
I'm Aliana Johnson with the Washington Free Beacon.
And I'm Elizabeth Vargas with News Nation, and we are live on News Nation and the CW. It is make or break time for the candidates on this stage right now, with the primary starting just weeks away. And we have a lot to cover over the next 2 hours, so let's begin with tonight's rules. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer questions, 60 seconds to give a rebuttal at the moderator's discretion. You will all see the timing lights that will indicate when time is up and it's time to stop talking.
The time we have is critical over the next 2 hours, so we ask the audience to please keep your applause to a minimum.
All right, with that, let's get started. On stage tonight, 4 candidates, all vying to become their party's nominee. And given the state of affairs in our political system right now, one of you might very well do it. Even many Democrats now admit that President Biden is a weak candidate, just as many Republicans acknowledge that former President Donald Trump's multiple legal troubles could imperil his quest for a second term, all of which means one of you could wind up the leader of the free world. Having said that, Mr. Trump is nearly 50 points ahead of all of you in the national polls.
That's
29 points ahead in Iowa, where the GOP caucuses are less than 6 weeks away. And so, as Republicans get ready to vote on whether any of you might be preferable to Mr. Trump, we begin with the question of electability. Governor DeSantis, your campaign and its super PAC have spent the most money, had the most high net worth donors, and had a wave of momentum coming into this race after your big re-election win in Florida. You were seen by many as the candidate most likely to consolidate the non-Trump field. But here we are, a month out from the first real votes, and you haven't managed to do it. In fact, Nikki Haley is beating you in New Hampshire and South Carolina now, and closing in on you in Iowa. Not to mention Trump, who is not only dominating in the early states, but is beating you in Florida by over 30 points.
Goodness.
Is it fair to say, as Senator Tim Scott did when he dropped out, that voters are telling you, not no, but not now?
Wow. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that timer. 90 seconds is going. The electability question against Ron DeSantis and the fact that Megyn Kelly went for the jugular is quite impressive, actually, considering she's a Fox News host, or at least previously was. Again, the rest of you might be able to hear what he's saying, but electability is the question. Trump is dominating the Republican Party, and the reason why is because of his populism. Whether we like it or not, whether we agree or disagree that his brand of politics is populist, to the rest of America it is. And so what we need to do is contrast his level of populism, that fear-mongering, that hate, that discrimination, the fighting for having a wall, for making America great again, and not defining what that actually means, just simply being talk and rhetoric and bluster. We need to show that we as a people, as a country, can work together, that we can build something together, and that our diversity is our strength in so doing. And that's the level of campaigning and what I bring to the table. As your future president, I intend to showcase what we can do together, what we can build, what we can do as a united front, rather than my own ego or what could be mistaken as nostalgia of the past when things were better.
Stand up and say that it is wrong to mutilate these kids, then you're not going to fight for the people back home. I will fight for you, and I will win for you.
Ambassador Haley, you left government service in 2018 with just $100,000 in the bank. 5 years later,
Respond to Ron. He continues to lie about my record. I actually said his Don't Say Gay bill didn't go far enough because it only talked about gender until the 3rd grade. And I said it shouldn't be done at all, that that's for parents to talk about, it shouldn't be talked about with schools. In reference to donors coming on board, look, we will take support from anybody we can take support from, but I have been a conservative fighter all my life. I was a Tea Party candidate when I became governor. We opposed every single corporate bailout we possibly could. We passed tort reform. We passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. We passed pro-life bills. We moved in unemployment from 11% to 3%. We took on the unions, and we took on Obama when it came to the unions, the Syrian refugees, and everything in between. And so I've had a fight. And so as much as Ron says that, that's not true. But when it comes to these corporate people that want to suddenly support us, we'll take it. But I don't ask them what their policies are. They ask me what my policies are. And I tell them what it is. Sometimes they agree with me, sometimes they don't. Some don't like how tough I am on China. Some don't like the fact that I've signed pro-life bills. Some don't like the fact that I may oppose corporate bailout. That doesn't matter. That's who I am. And that's why the most conservative grassroots group in the country, Americans for Prosperity, endorsed me last week.
Well,
that's not a good thing, Nikki. Oh my goodness.
You didn't respond to the criticism. It wasn't about the Parents' Rights and Education bill. It was about prohibiting sex change operations on minors. They do puberty blockers. These are irreversible. Talk to Chloe Cole. She went through this. Now she's an adult. She's warning against it. She may never be able to have kids again. That is what Nikki Haley opposed. She said the law shouldn't get involved in that. And I just ask you, if you're somebody that's going to be the president of the United States and you can't stand up against child abuse, how are you going to be able to stand up for anything? That is the truth. We have it on video.
I mean, I'm going to mute that for a second because I don't even know if this counts as the 90 seconds, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. That is a very disingenuous topic because you found one person who regrets getting their transgender surgery or their transgender treatment. And usually that's less than 1%. Out of all of the transgender people who have gotten gender-affirming surgery or treatment, less than 1% literally have any issues with that. And that law made it literally impossible for youth to get the gender-affirming treatment that they need and want. I muted myself. Oops.
A unifier, and to question your authenticity.
Megan, I think there's a time and place for everything. We need somebody in the White House who absolutely is going to be a fighter when it counts. And I did say that there was some good. I want to go back, though, to Nikki Haley's comment from earlier that you left the UN, you became a military
Interesting that they are bagging on Nikki. So this could be this is commentary at this point. It's interesting that they're choosing to go after Nikki, which means they want to make it an all-boys platform, which, granted, I am also a boy in that regard, but it is interesting that they're circling the wagons against her. I'm really curious to see how well she does throughout the rest of the debate, since she has already been targeted.
Soros Jr. funding lawsuits across this country against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot, funding left-wing causes. We discovered this week that he is one of Nikki Haley's largest supporters. Larry Fink, the king of the woke. Tied to what they say on the internet. So I think that this is far more corrupt than I even imagined when I entered politics. But I will say this. It is going to take a leader from the outside with fresh legs. I can
agree with that.
From the next generation to unite this country. Not the broken politicians who are puppets of the puppet masters, but the actual people in this country. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. I think it's going to take somebody whose best days in life are still ahead to see a country whose best days are ahead of itself. And I think I can reach that next generation better than anybody else in this race.
Thank you.
Well, considering he's the only one on that stage, I see why he thinks that. However, it's very clear that what we need in this country is someone who actually believes that and isn't just saying it to pander.
And governor. It may be bankrupt to him, but it certainly wasn't bankrupt to us. Secondly, I did serve on the board of Boeing. I did a lot of work with Boeing when I was governor. They were a great partner to me. I served for 10 months. And then when they decided after COVID that they wanted to go for a corporate bailout, I've never supported corporate bailout, so I respectfully stepped back and got off the board. I love Boeing. They build good commercial airplanes. They build airplanes for our Air Force. I am proud of them. They employ a lot of people in South Carolina. But that's why I left the Boeing board. There's nothing to what he's saying. And in terms of these donors that are supporting me, they're just jealous. They wish that they were supporting them, but I'm not going to sit there and
Damn. Right now, I think Nikki Haley might be in the number 2 spot.
These local corporations in BlackRock. The idea that I want to do that in Florida, they were managing our part of our pension.
Wow.
And then when they did the ESG,
I'm gonna not mute it. I'm gonna let that play in the back. But as far as commentary goes, they are literally fighting over the fact that they don't have dark money, and they're bagging on Nikki Haley because she does. That's impressive. And the fact that Nikki is actually holding her own despite that, it makes these other candidates look childish. So right now, it's Nikki in the lead on this national debate.
And the fact of the matter is, we know from her history, Nikki will cave to those big donors when it counts. And that is not acceptable.
I did write that book, Ron, and the irony is Nikki Haley was...
We haven't even gotten to the debate yet.
When I wrote that book, but now I worry, I was warning about the woke industrial complex in this country as a warning. Apparently she read it as a how-to manual, just like she reads George Orwell's books as well. And so I think that that's actually far more dangerous.
So the childishness is very strong right now.
Fascism under Biden. Jack Smith has subpoenaed every last retweet that someone has issued from Donald Trump in the year 2020. The only person more fascist than the Biden regime now is Nikki Haley, who thinks the government should identify every one of those individuals with an ID. That is
he
not
doesn't
freedom,
even know what fascism
means. She
means.
should come nowhere near the levers of power, let alone the White House.
Fascism is the merger of the corporation and the state. He's an entrepreneur.
Good to see you.
Can you please speak to the requirement that you said that every anonymous internet user needs to out themselves? They're both hitting you on it.
I would be happy to, and I love all the attention, fellas. Thank you for that.
She's winning. People don't even... Oh, my goodness.
What I said was that social media companies need to show us their algorithms. I also said there are millions of bots on social media right now. They're foreign, they're Chinese, they're Iranian. I will always fight for freedom of speech for Americans. We do not need freedom of speech for Russians and Iranians and Hamas. We need social media companies to go and fight back on all of these
First of all,
bots that are happening. That's what
she wants to globally silence every other country on social media. That's what she just said. That's maybe not what she meant, but that's exactly what she just said. I mean, it's not an incorrect thing to say that there should be transparency on social media platforms. What she should have said is, we have the right to free speech, but platforms do not have the right to exist with impunity. That's the regulation that is missing. But I digress, because all they're trying to do is a caterwaul against one another.
Expansion of government. We have anonymous speech. The Federalist Papers were written with anonymous writers. Jay, Madison, and Hamilton, they went under Publius. It's something that's important, and especially given how conservatives have been attacked, and they've lost jobs, and they've been canceled.
Yes, conservatives have lost their jobs and been attacked and been canceled for being neo-Nazis and making anti-Semitic remarks and hateful comments. Oh my goodness. I don't even, I wish they would moderate this a bit more, because right now this is just an argument, and you can see that DeSantis is getting huffy. And Nikki is getting all this free airtime by being able to respond. We haven't even gotten an actual topic yet. We haven't gotten an actual question yet.
This is more dangerous than the Democrats.
You're lying. This section's over. Okay. Governor Christie.
Really?
Just facts.
I'm usually not somebody who gets missed, but okay, let's go.
What's happening? Okay, I got you. Listen, you endorsed Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020. You gave him an A for his first term. Since then, however, you've turned on him, calling him a liar, a loser, a con man, and someone who cannot win. You've even said that you got into this race just to stop President Trump. His approval rating with Republicans is currently at 81%.
Holy.
Yours is at 25%.
To be fair, I didn't realize it was that
Your best
high.
state is New Hampshire.
I thought it was
Over
still
there,
low.
2/3 of GOP voters say they would be angry and disappointed if you won. Respectfully, Governor, you have not stopped Mr. Trump, and voters may wonder how you could possibly become the nominee of a party that does not appear to like you very much.
Well, look, Megan, it's often very difficult to be the only person on the stage who's telling the truth, and the only person who is taking on what needs to be taken on. I look at my watch now. We're 17 minutes into this debate, and except for your little speech in the beginning, we've had these three acting as if the race is between the four of us. The fifth guy, who doesn't have the guts to show up and stand here, he's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet, I've got these three guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given him great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these three are timid to say anything about it. Maybe it's because they have future aspirations. Maybe those future aspirations are now, or maybe they're 4 years from now. But the fact of the matter is the truth needs to be told. And for us to go 17 minutes without discussing the guy who has all those gaudy numbers you talked about is ridiculous. I'm in this race because the truth needs to be spoken. He is unfit. This is a guy who just said this past week,
That's impressive, actually. Right now, he seems like the adult in the room.
Governor DeSantis,
of course, Israel.
Tonight, as we speak, the war is back on in Gaza. Israeli tanks are on the move and have surrounded the home of the leader of Hamas. 8 Americans have been held hostage in the tunnels beneath Gaza for 60 days now. American troops and warships in the Middle East are under attack. How far would you go as president to secure the release of those 8 American hostages? And
all right, so that's the question. And, of course, my phone decided to go back. All right. In 90 seconds, as president, what would I do to immediately secure our American hostages and also address the conflict? Very simply, is Israel our ally or not? If Benjamin Netanyahu will not speak to us as allies, as equals, then we must take that step as being the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the country and cut off Israel and all of their funding. And if that's not enough, then we take military steps to secure our people. Now, is Hamas a threat to the United States? No. Is Hamas a threat to Israel? Also no. Hamas is a freedom fighting group. And that's the one thing that is not being addressed in any of these debates and throughout the media. They are being portrayed as a terrorist organization because that is what is easy to sell and what is easy to share in media. But Hamas is fighting for their sovereignty, for their right to exist as Palestinians. I bet if we, the United States, actually negotiated with Hamas, we could resolve all of this peacefully, and we would have to hold Israel accountable for their egregious war crimes. And in so doing, we could have peace in that region within 24 hours of me assuming the presidency. I guess we'll finish whatever DeSantis has to say.
Israel, they're our best ally in the Middle East. We have a unique relationship with them, and you will see a strong relationship when I'm the president of the United States.
But would you send American
This is the problem with the first 3 debates. Ron gets asked a question, and he doesn't answer it. Your question was very specific. You said, would you send American troops as commander-in-chief? And he went on to this minute and 30-second hosanna about his knowledge of the military and what we need to do.
Which none of them have served.
Your question. Look, when you're president of the United States, you're not going to have a choice whether to answer that question or not. Your generals, your Secretary of Defense, your Secretary of State, your National Security Advisor are going to present plans to you. They're going to look at you and say, do we go or don't we, Mr. President? And you can't give a 90-second speech about your military service.
So would you send American troops in to rescue those hostages?
Absolutely. If they had a plan which showed me that we could get them out safely, you're damn right I'd send the American Army in there to get our people home and get them home now. And I'll answer that question directly.
Thank you, Governor Christie.
Huh.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you have said it was irresponsible for Ambassador Haley to call Hamas's terrorist rampage an attack on America, and for her to...
That's very interesting. Governor Christie seems to actually be the adult in the room, which, when he was governor, he was quite the authoritarian. Very interesting how he is changing his positions.
Would it be a good thing to finish Hamas?
Finish them was purposefully vague in a discussion that included Iran, which is what I objected to. And I think it's, as U.S. president, you have to be responsible. What happened to Israel was dead wrong. What Hamas did was medieval. It was subhuman. It was immoral. And we have to
there's
call
the
that out for
subhuman,
what it is
the
on October
anti-Semitic
7th.
rhetoric.
But to say that that was an attack on America fails a basic test. I mean, Nick, if you can't tell the difference between where Israel is and the U.S. is on a map, I can have my 3-year-old son show you the difference. That is irresponsible because it has major consequences, because that doesn't leave room for what actually is an attack on America. So I believe I have the strongest pro-Israel position actually on the stage, even though it's a little bit different than the standard GOP talking points. And it is this. The founding vision of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, the George Washington figure of Israel, what did he believe? He believed that we don't want, as Israel, to depend on the fleeting sympathies of the West and have our hands tied. I think Israel has an absolute right to defend itself to the fullest, without the U.S., the UN, or the EU, or anybody else second-guessing.
Okay, but sure, Israel has the right to defend itself, but what it is doing is illegally colonizing and occupying Palestine. Palestine is defending itself, and it doesn't even have a standing military. You have an actual military superpower with nuclear capability massacring and committing genocide against Palestine. This is not the discussion that needs to be had.
That's how I'm going to leave. So I'll tell Bibi, you smoke the terrorists on your southern border, you go ahead and we're rooting for you. We're going to smoke the terrorists on our own southern border, and that's how I'm going to leave this country.
Who's the terrorists at our southern border?
Americans were killed in that attack. And so if you looked at this terrorist attack and the number of Americans, this would be one of the top 10 terrorist attacks in American history. So our own people were killed in that attack. And I think it's absolutely appropriate to point that out and to say that we're in this together, and we are going to work with Israel so that these people are brought to justice.
I agree with that.
Ambassador Haley, I'm coming to you. Iran is on the threshold of becoming a nuclear state. The Wall Street Journal reported that Iranian military leaders gave the green light for Hamas's attack on Israel. You said in last month's debate that, by contrast to the Biden administration's approach to Iran, you would, quote, punch them once and punch them hard. Were you saying that it's time to bomb Iran?
No, I was not saying it's time to bomb Iran, but I will tell you, I dealt with Iran every day when I was at the United Nations, and they only respond to they did on Iran that allowed China to send them billions to fill their proxies. What they don't respond to is when you give $6 billion for 5 hostages. That only makes them want more hostages. What they don't respond to is when they do 140 strikes on our men and women in Syria and Iraq, and we do nothing but just some small shots back. You've got to punch them hard, and let them know that. That's the only way they're going to
this is the problem with Nikki Haley, right? The problem that the others are facing with her is that she is incredibly knowledgeable in her field and in her craft. She could be a leader. Granted, not one that I personally agree with, not one that I think would be good for this country, but she knows foreign policy. She knows what it takes to deal with these other countries who are trying to flex and trying to become nuclear powers. She's not wrong. There are certain ways to handle Iran. There are certain ways to handle these countries that could be considered enemy states. So she's speaking with authority, and it's going to be very hard to topple that. between her being able to actually handle the fluff from DeSantis and Vivek, and Governor Christie actually being the adult in the room, I think we have our clear breakaways of who is vying for the second place, according to this debate.
Because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins. These are all connected. But what wins all of that is a strong America, not a weak America. And that's what Joe Biden's given us.
I want to say one thing about the tie to Ukraine, if I may. So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to know that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send out troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it.
I mean, again, a valid point, but he's just making it poorly. He's making a personal attack. He has no military bearing on his own. He's not mentioning any of the provinces, and he's just blustering about a point that he's not really making well.
The donors right there that are playing about the puppet.
Let me just say something here. You know, his reasonable peace deal in Ukraine, he made it clear. Give them all the land they've already stolen. Promise Putin you'll never put Ukraine in Russia, and then trust Putin not to have a relationship with China. Let me tell you something. That's no
That's
reasonable.
not my deal. That's not my deal.
Yes, it's exactly what you
I'll
said.
describe
You
my
do
deal
this
to
at
you.
every debate.
I'll tell you
You
exactly
say,
what it
no,
is.
don't interrupt
I'll tell
me.
you
I
what it
didn't
is.
interrupt you. Okay? You
Wow.
say
Tell me about how
this.
you
You
understand
do
how
this
to die.
at, you
Go
do
for
this
it.
at every debate.
This is so
You grab
bad.
them stuff and you say something. All of us see it on video. We confront you on the debate stage. You say you didn't say it, and then you back away. And I want to
I'll
say
tell you
one.
exactly
No,
what I said, Chris.
I'm not done yet.
This is funny. I mean, this is sad. This is actually really depressing. But Governor Christie is truly presenting himself as the adult in the room, and he's schimping Vivek.
So shut up for a while.
I think Vivek has officially lost.
I'll take that.
DeSantis actually won that round by saying nothing.
We're now 25 minutes into this debate,
30.
and he has insulted Nikki Haley's basic intelligence, not her positions, her basic intelligence.
Which is sexist.
She doesn't know
It's a dog
reasons.
whistle.
She wouldn't be able to find something on a map that his 3-year-old could find. Look, if you want to disagree on issues, that's fine. And Nikki and I disagree on some issues. But I'll tell you this, I've known her for 12 years, which is longer than he's even started to vote in the Republican primary. And while we disagree about some issues and we disagree about who should be president of the United States, what we don't disagree on is this is a smart, accomplished woman, and you should stop insulting
So
her.
I'm going to take this.
Which is the point. That is the point. Nikki Haley is incredibly accomplished. So trying to attack her as an entrepreneur with no basis in politics other than your ego is kind of ridiculous.
In eastern Ukraine, he actually wants us to fight for it. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience.
It is true though.
So do everybody a favor.
Ugh. See, this is the frustrating thing, right? These four are trying to prove to you and me and the rest of America right now, right here, that they are qualified to become president of the United States. The only person who has shown themselves to be qualified for the president of the United States on this stage so far is Nikki Haley, followed by Governor Christie, who has really more so just been a reasonable individual. If anything, Vivek and DeSantis have proven themselves incapable of even treating the campaign or the office with anything resembling dignity or respect. So the fact that he's getting all this airtime and the fact that he's speaking so arrogantly and abrasively is not doing him any favors. I think Vivek is going to drop out after this debate. And if he doesn't, I think he should.
Let me just.
It's actually Crimea is the wrong answer.
All right. Let me just say this. You know, this is the kind of thing where he talks about experience.
Yeah.
You know,
What experience?
I was the U.S. attorney in New Jersey when the terrorist attacks were launched against the United States in 2001. I brought the first two cases in this country against terrorists who tried to attack us again. And I know about the threat of terrorism and bullying in this country and around the world. And at that time, he was learning about the provinces in Ukraine, sitting with his smart-ass mouth at Harvard. That's what was going on. And so, the fact of the matter is, and back then he was a Democrat. So, you know, the fact.
Anna, you do bring up a valid point. He's a billionaire, so he can just run out of arrogance and ego. But it's true. He like, even I have more experience. I have more valid experience in government than he does, because I actually served in the military and I got to see what that was actually like, what kind of the moving parts were in the military, and how these decisions that were made could impact the country, and how it would impact individuals. So even though I've never been in an official capacity, a part of the government beyond serving in the military, I have more experience than Vivek. And I wouldn't even have the audacity to attack Nikki Haley's experience. I would attack her policies, which are egregious. She's a warmonger. But she knows she's a warmonger. That's the difference. And she has served in the capacity that her decisions, her actions, facilitated war. And she knows that. So, with that being said, I mean,
I'm a member of the National Guard.
Aside from all that, I mean, as far as commentary goes, right? Aside from all that, it's been 35 minutes, and we have effectively had one question, which was about Israel. What would you, as president, do about Israel? And mostly it's been Vivek acting like a child, Governor Christie's basically admonishing him, and Nikki responding. So, this is not what I was expecting in the debate. Granted, I should have been expecting this. This is par for the course, but goodness gracious, this is appalling. If you were a voter who was on the fence between Trump and these people, and you saw this, you would think, wow, Nikki Haley is actually weathering the storm and Governor Christie is actually being an adult. The other two, I would dismiss out of hand. Now, granted, being on the stage, right, because I would then be addressed, it would be, Mr. Ronan, you have zero credibility, you have no experience, you've ran multiple times, multiple campaigns, never gotten even elected to a position, yet you feel that you're worthy of becoming president of the United States. How would you assuage the American voter that you are worth voting for, and that you could be the contrast of Donald Trump, right? At least I could answer that question, you know, and in 90 seconds I would say something on the lines of, you're right, I have ran and I have lost quite a bit, but what I have done is kept my consistency. I have maintained my moral and ethical center, my true north. And that true north has always been putting people first. And that's why I haven't been successful, because I will not cater to corporate money. I will not accept PAC money. I will not accept super PAC money. And I will not encourage those corporations and industries to donate to me in the first place. I am undeniably diametrically opposed to the billionaires and the corporate elite who have created a fascism in our own country, which, in case anybody was wondering, since we're throwing that word around, is the merge of the corporation and the state. And what else could we have if corporations like BlackRock, like Monsanto, like Abbott Nutrition can write legislation, give it to politicians, and then have that exact verbiage passed into law? I am here to stand opposed to the corruption, to the bribery, and to support American people as an American people. My voice is the same voice, the same outrage, the same anger and suffering and pain that the millions of Americans have to endure every single day because of the policies and beliefs of the people on this stage and those who are too timid to arrive. Now, that may or may not have been 90 seconds, But that's the answer that tells a nation that you're ready to lead and that you want to lead, that you don't want to lead out of arrogance or ego, that you want to build something, that you want to bring people a voice and build them a platform and elevate them. What we have seen so far is ego and cattiness, which is only serving the purpose of improving Nikki Haley's chances of getting at least number 2, and Governor Christie being a reasonable candidate when we saw him as governor doing anything but being reasonable. So I don't know how long this commercial break is supposed to last. Oh, maybe as soon as I addressed it is when it came to an end. And we're back.
To the Republican primary debate live on News Nation from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We are now going to go to the crisis on the southern border. Polls show immigration and the crisis are among the most pressing issues for Republican voters right now. Both the issue of migrants crossing illegally into our country and the separate issue being smuggled in mostly through ports of entry. All year, News Nation has been at the border documenting the crisis. In 2023 alone, Border Patrol encountered a record 2.4 million migrants. All 4 of you have talked tough. The question now is, how realistic is the talk? So, Governor DeSantis, I'd like to start with you. You have pledged to send the military to the southern border on day 1 of your administration with orders to, quote, stone cold dead anyone illegally entering with a backpack that you believe can be military.
Anna, can you mute yourself? Because your microphone and background noise is coming through.
You are a former military lawyer. Why do you think this idea of yours would be legal?
The drug cartels are invading our country and they are killing our citizens.
Okay, I'm not even going to listen to what DeSantis has to say because we already know that his immigration policy is just pandering to fear. If you truly want to address the immigration problem at the southern border, there's 2 ways to handle it, right? Obviously, there's the military force and violating human rights, right? That's one way. But the real way to address this issue is by treating it as a humanitarian crisis. For one, we already resolved this by allowing immigrants to enlist in the military, serve their time, and then get citizenship after the fact. We had the DACA, the Dreamers, right? We had all sorts of programs in place, and then we, the American government, betrayed those people. So if we reinstate those things and then create means and methods working towards your citizenship, for instance, all you have to do is work in America for 4 years or whatever amount of time that we want. We get them gainfully employed, contributing to our tax systems, contributing to Social Security and Medicaid, earning a livable wage, actually contributing to society in a meaningful way, which is the main argument against illegal immigration taking jobs regardless. These people aren't just random people with no skills or abilities. They have trades, they have degrees. We have deficiencies all across the country. And if we integrate them into the actual workforce, we can actually handle this humanitarian crisis with poise while simultaneously rebuilding much of our crumbling infrastructure, especially since the COVID era. And that's really all that needs to be said. We'll go ahead and listen to everybody else.
There's going to be a new sheriff in town, and these drug cartels better buckle up.
I don't like that this is making me look bald.
To deport all migrants who are here in this country illegally. But then you said in Londonderry, New Hampshire last month that you will not deport those who are working and paying taxes.
See,
rather than
that even these people agree.
So first of all, what I said is all of the 7 or 8 million illegals that have come under Biden's watch absolutely have to go back. We have to stop the incentive of what's bringing them over here in the first place. Biden just gave temporary protective status.
The incentive is our foreign policy.
That's 500,000 Social Security cards. That's 500,000 driver's licenses. And I know from my time at the United Nations, the first thing they do is pick up the phone and said, "We came over, come on over." And that's what sends more. You have to go and deport these people so they know it can't happen again. For those that have been here longer than that, we've got to start seeing who is it How long have they been here? Have they been vetted? Have they paid taxes?
Let's just put a Star of David on their sleeve while we're at it.
But what I know is my parents came here legally. They put in the time, they put in the price. They are offended by those that are coming illegally. We can't let them skip the line. But when you talk about fentanyl, like you did before, let's look at something else. Yes, I think we should send special operations over and take out the cartels. I think we should do a remain in Mexico policy so they never step foot in U.S. soil in the first place. But look at where fentanyl came from. Let's go to the heart of the matter. It came from China. That's why we need to.
But that's also not true. Fentanyl was brought into the United States as a pain relief drug. This is once again missing the entire point.
But that's all he was with China. Because here he allowed fentanyl to continue to come over. He continued to allow them to he would give them technology that would build up their military and hurt us. He allowed the Chinese infiltration for them to buy up farmland, to put money in our universities, and to continue to do things that were harmful for America. We now have a spy base in Cuba and police stations, and Trump didn't do anything about it.
For China, though, I mean, this is rich, because when she was governor of South Carolina, she was the #1 governor of bringing the CCP in.
So, okay. Like, I get it. This is the Republican debate in that there's going to be misinformation, or at least a difference of how their information gets portrayed. But, like, this is disingenuous at best. And I'm not saying that Nikki is in any way dumb or anything like that. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say, is that she is misrepresenting the facts that she was a part of. So I get why she's doing it, but like it's difficult to watch.
The second thing is he has a company, a Chinese company, UGAS, that he just did a rally there last year. They have given you $340,000 in campaign donations between them and their employees. They are tied to the Chinese government. Didn't go forward. There's another one. They want to expand it to get $2 million in subsidies.
Ban China from buying land in the state of Florida.
But see, he says that, right? But how much ownership of a company do you have to have before you consider it Chinese? Because investment companies and corporations can completely flout those regulations.
False that they could not find one instance of me recruiting a Chinese business coming to Florida. You know why? Because we never recruited any Chinese businesses.
Over the past year, fentanyl has killed more than 75,000 Americans, 1,000 of them right here in Alabama. You have vowed to use the military to, quote, annihilate drug labs inside Mexico, something the president of Mexico said would be a hostile act. But fentanyl can easily be made anywhere, and labs that are shut down can easily and quickly be replaced. Are your tough enforcement policies offering false hope to a country racked by addiction?
To the contrary, I don't think it's going to have to come to that if we deal with the actual demand side problem that we also have in this country. I mean, the easy part is talking about how we're going to use our military to secure the border. I will, and I believe that everybody else wants to do the same thing. But
no, nobody does.
Crisis of purpose and meaning, the mental health epidemic raging across this country like wildfire. And there's a reason why after the opioid crisis, we see fentanyl. And even after we get fentanyl, and we are going to be sure to make sure we do it, this one is worse. For many reasons. They're illegally lacing it into pharmaceuticals. So it's more dangerous.
The pharmaceuticals added it outright. Buddy.
Thinking that we're going to have dealt with that underlying mental health epidemic in this country by just dealing with the demand side of it. But I want to get back to this issue of the root cause, because a lot of these are coming.
Honestly, I think the problem is if I was on the debate stage, I wouldn't be interrupting. Like, I would do my best to be quiet, but my facial expressions would be egregious, because it would be this the entire time.
I will tell Xi Jinping, you will not only not buy land in this country or donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until they're playing by the same set of rules. And the same country that's putting fentanyl and illegal pharmaceuticals in Mexico, it's no coincidence, is the exact same country that also unleashed on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic.
See, and there's the, oh my,
with every financial
I don't, how do you,
that is what it actually
so, okay. So as far as commentary is concerned, right? Like, how do you, I guess, my question is, how do you combat the misinformation? Because like, this isn't even
the American dream, but it's increasingly out of reach for younger Americans. This year, mortgage rates reached 30-year highs. Home prices have risen $190,000 over the past decade. Is this the free market at work? Or should the federal government do something to make homes more affordable?
Ooh, I would love to answer this question.
First of all, you're exactly right. My daughter just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home.
So I'm going to mute Nikki because I actually want to answer that question. For one, this is the free market at work. When you can let BlackRock and other conglomerate corporations that are billions of dollars deep invest in residential real estate, i.e. property for you and me and families and everyone else under the sun, when you let billionaires buy all that stuff up, then upcharge $500, $600, $700, $800 or more just to charge rent and then profit off of the entire mortgage, plus extorting the person to live there. Yes, that's the free market at work, and it's egregious. The federal government absolutely should step in. Very simply, it is illegal for a non-citizen to own more than one residential property unless they can prove it is for a next of kin to live in. Period. Dot. End of story. I don't know what else she has to say, though.
Paying down this debt, make sure that we stop the borrowing, stop the spending. I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels, because our kids are not going to forgive us for all the spending that happened. And as much as everybody—
You mean the bailouts to banks and corporations? That was $36 trillion?
He did just in 4 years. And we're all paying the price of that, including those mortgage prices. We're going to come back to President Trump, I promise.
Wow.
Governor DeSantis, the latest News Nation Decision Desk poll found that inflation tops the worries of American voters. 61% say they're very concerned, and the working class is hardest hit. Economists say this was fueled by a glut of federal spending. The Biden administration has added $6 trillion to the national debt so far, but President Trump wasn't exactly a penny pincher. His administration added $7.8 trillion. Do Republicans, including President Trump, share the blame for inflation? And what concrete steps would a President DeSantis take to help Americans make ends meet?
So I guess I am cheating because I'm answering multiple questions that are being directed towards other debates, to other debaters. So to that end, I do apologize. I am kind of getting that unfair advantage by answering debate questions that wouldn't necessarily be directed towards me. But the question that was asked was, do both Biden and Trump share the blame for contributing to inflation and the deficit? The answer is obviously yes. The MMT crowd, yes, I'm aware. We are a economy that spends money into existence, therefore deficit doesn't actually exist. Well aware of that argument. To that end, though, we operate off of taxation and budget spending and deficits. That's how it is conveyed. What do we do about it? One, a federal, a federal lift on the embargo on marijuana and cannabis and hemp in general would generate $1.5 trillion on average per harvest, which can be up to 3 harvests per year, which is $4.5 trillion in net revenue if it was taxed at 20% at the federal level. What's more, if we actually, I don't know, taxed the wealthy and corporations and didn't subsidize the oil and gas industries and so on and so forth, we would once again generate trillions of dollars. And then if we would invest all that money into building our infrastructure and rebuilding our infrastructure, investing in high-speed rail and improving our roads, getting fiber optic internet all across the country, if we did these things, our deficit would plummet because the highway system in of itself generates $6 per $1 spent. It's simple math, and it's not difficult.
to allowing his platform to launder money for terrorists, including Hamas. You say your cryptocurrency plan will, quote, ensure economic freedom for Americans, end quote. Won't it also ensure economic freedom for fraudsters, criminals, and terrorists?
Look, fraudsters, criminals, and terrorists have been defrauding people for a long time. Our regulations need to catch up with the current moment. The fact that SBF was able to do what he did at FTX shows that whatever they have as the current framework isn't working. And I think it is nothing short of embarrassing that Gary Gensler, the current leader of the SEC, in front of Congress, could not even say whether Ethereum counted as a regulated security or not. And so I think that this is just another example of the administrative state gone too far. Here's the dirty little secret in American politics today. The people who we elect to run the government are not the ones who are even actually running the government. It is the bureaucrats in those three-letter agencies that are writing regulations that Congress never gave them the authority to run. And the good news is a U.S. president can absolutely fix that. That takes a U.S. president with a spine. So what I've said is in my administration, by the end of year one, we will have a 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats. We will shut down government agencies that should not exist. We will rescind any regulation that fails the test of West Virginia versus EPA, which is the most important Supreme Court case of our lifetime. That said, if Congress didn't delegate that to an administrative agency, then it's unconstitutional. These are seismic changes. These are big changes that the next president can deliver without asking Congress for permission or for forgiveness. And I want people to understand that distinction, because people have been sold myths by politicians for a long time saying, I'm going to work with Congress to do this or that. Much of what you've heard on the stage from the other politicians fit that description. They need Congress. The things that I'm promising you, this is what the leader of the executive branch gets to do under Article 2 of the Constitution.
Thank you, sir.
Cut down the bureaucracy. That is a thing, grow our economy.
So unfortunately, I agreed with Vivek in the first half. Like, we don't know what crypto is, and people are trying to regulate it, right? I'm a staunch advocate for crypto. I could speak for hours on crypto. I find it fascinating as a technology, not just as a currency, but my goodness, the last bit of that, he just wants to arbitrarily get rid of 3/4 of government. That's not leading, that's not administration. That is literally lean principles in the government sector when government is meant to provide service, security, and livelihood to the American people and not run a corporation to maximize profits. That's not how that works. It looks like we're on another commercial break. So, I don't even, it is so hard to keep up with this. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this is, not only are you navigating the cognitive dissonance of their beliefs, which we don't need to get into, but you're also dealing with the 10 or 20% of what their statements are, which are valid, right? There are valid things that all of them have said, right? And then the remaining 80% just being astronomically insane. Arbitrarily getting rid of 75% of the federal government. Insane. I believe Nikki Haley wanted to just arbitrarily deport every immigrant person in the past almost 4 years, 7 or 8 million people, which if they're illegally here, then that means they don't have documentation, which means how would we even find them in the first place? Never mind the logistics of everything, right? And then we have Governor DeSantis, who doesn't even realize the concepts of Chinese investment in business and in states' economies isn't just because they have the CCP in their LLC documentation. Like, Chinese investors are like American investors. They have their hands everywhere. BlackRock owns half the world, and they're an American company. Like, that's how these things work. I can't even take notes fast enough because the typing would be too distracting. But it's hard to keep up, not just with the lies and the misinformation. The fact that they believe it is part of the problem, but it's breathtaking, actually. It's impressive how unaware of reality these four people are. Granted, Trump is too, but that's neither here nor there. It's mind-blowing to me that they can get on national television and say these things with a straight face, and then blame each other for not having the understanding and knowledge and education on policy, on domestic and foreign issues, when they themselves don't even have a good grasp on what these are. And I'm not even a qualified, quote unquote, credentialed candidate. Yet I can pay attention. I have done the math. I've done research. I have literally crunched the numbers. Most domestic policy can be solved like that. It literally can. And Vivek was right. By utilizing the alphabet soup agencies, we can resolve housing crisis, education, healthcare. We can resolve just about every single domestic issue, and I don't have to ask Congress for a goddamn thing. Foreign policy is a little bit more complicated, of course. I can take emergency action. I can call for summits. I can, use my platform and call out foreign leaders and then hurt those relations or whatever the case may be. But my goodness, the issues that they're talking about are completely different from reality. Like the way they are describing some of these issues have no basis in reality whatsoever. And I couldn't even debate isn't even the word to use at this point. You'd have to debunk them first, tell them the actual truth, and then maybe be able to debate them if you wanted to actually have a debate. What I would have to do if I were on that stage is like etch a sketch my head every so often and be like, I don't know what fantasy world they're living in, but this is the real world that we, the American people, are dealing with. These are the issues that we're dealing with, and this is how to resolve actual issues. I have no idea what you people are talking about. Because that is a fantasy world of your own making that has no basis in reality. Just floored. Absolutely floored at what I am hearing. And like I said, I can't even write notes fast enough. Here we are, round 3.
You all spend a lot of time criticizing each other on the stage, as Governor Christie pointed out, and less so for most of you on the front runner in this race, Donald Trump. We invited him to come tonight, as you know, but he declined to come. But we'd like to ask you a couple questions about him now.
Oh boy, here we go.
Former President Trump recently promised, if he's reelected, to bring back and expand his program restricting immigration from Muslim countries.
Wow!
In Iowa on October 16th.
No longer will we allow dangerous lunatics, haters, bigots, and maniacs to get residency in our country. We're not going to let them stay here. If you empathize with radical Islamic terrorists and extremists, you're disqualified. You're just disqualified.
And Dr. Haley, do you support President Trump's plan for ideological screening?
No.
I don't think that you have a straight up Muslim ban as much as you look at the countries that have terrorist activity that want to hurt Americans. You can ban those people from those countries. That's the way we should look at it, is which countries are a threat to us. You look at what came across the southern border. What worries me the most are those that came from Iran, from Yemen, from Lebanon. Those areas where they say death to America. That's where you want to be careful. It's not about a religion. It's about a fact that certain countries are dangerous and are threats to us. The president has one job, and that's to keep them.
See, this is why I say Nikki Haley makes some extremely valid points, and she is very strong in foreign policy. She's right. You can't make a religious ban. If you're going to approach this issue, which again, I don't agree with any sort of religious ban or national ban. If you're worried about being attacked, maybe don't be a country that others want to attack. I don't know, maybe create foreign policy that isn't brutal authoritarian imperialism.
But look what happened in Europe. You have more anti-Semitism in Germany than at any time since Adolf Hitler. Why? Because they imported mass numbers of people who reject their culture. Europe is committing suicide with a mass migration, and it's illegal and legal. Nikki Haley said the other day there should be no limits on legal immigration, and that corporate CEOs should set the policy on that. There needs to be limits on immigration, and we should not be importing people from cultures that are hostile. So
see, this is what I'm saying. Like, the cognitive dissonance. We are a nation of immigrants. Like the United States is the melting pot. We have more cultural diversity in this country than in any other country in the world. Period. Like, this,
There are things that the government can do right now that nobody's talking about amongst the professional politicians in this race. What about all of the illegals who are already here? Here's the answer. There's 287G in the law. That is a provision that already allows ICE agents to deputize or allow local law enforcement to enforce those ICE warrants.
Jesus.
Exactly. Nobody-
Brown shirts, baby. Let's just round them up and kick them out. Let's just get every single hoot hollering redneck ready to shoot and kill brown people. Yes, excellent. You do realize if you don't wear a suit on the street, Vivek, they will come after you next because they will not recognize you. It happens all the time in law enforcement. Black officers get attacked by white officers off duty every single.
Promising to seal the southern border. He has also pledged to begin the largest deportation operation in American history, saying that migrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. He has pledged to round up and expel an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. What do you make of that plan?
I think it's completely predictable. I mean, look, he's made it very clear. There's no mystery to what he wants to do. He started off his campaign by saying, I am your retribution. 8 years ago, he said, I am your voice. This is an angry, bitter man who now wants to be back as president because he wants to exact retribution on anyone who has disagreed with him, anyone who has tried to hold him to account for his own conduct. And every one of these policies that he's talking about are about pursuing a plan of retribution. And yet, at the first debate, my 3 colleagues on this stage, when asked if he would be convicted of federal felonies, would they still support him, raise their hand, looked into the camera, and let everybody know that they would still support him, even if convicted of federal felonies. Federal felonies, by the way. Federal felonies, which involve our election process, federal felonies, which involve the most sensitive of our governmental secrets, federal felonies where he instructed others to commit crimes, folks who are now agreeing to go to jail because of what they did in his name. So do I think he was kidding when he said he was a dictator? All you have to do is look at the history. And that's why failing to speak out against him, making excuses for him, pretending that somehow he's a victim, empowers him. You want to know why those poll numbers are where they are? Because folks like these 3 guys on the stage make it seem like his conduct is acceptable. Let me make it clear. His conduct is unacceptable. He's unfit, and be careful of what you're going to get. If you ever got another Donald Trump term, he's letting you know, I am your retribution. He will only be, Elizabeth, he will only be his own retribution. He doesn't care for the American people. It's not.
So thank you, Governor Christie, for literally saying the words. There's really nothing else to say.
Day one of his second presidency than Joe Biden was on day one of his first. You have said Trump is not the same man he was when he ran in 2016. Your campaign is running ads showing Trump confused. And you have said he has, quote, lost the zip on his fastball. You seem to be saying Donald Trump is no longer mentally fit to be president. Is that what you think?
Look, he is showing Father Time is undefeated. The idea that we're going to put someone up there that's almost 80 and there's going to be no effects from that, we all know that that's not true. And so we have an opportunity to do a next generation of leaders and really be able to move this country forward. We also need a president that can serve 2 terms.
Here's the thing. Okay. Yeah, we do need a new generation of leaders, but why on earth would we want you and Vivek and Nikki Haley and or Governor Christie? Like, we clearly do need a new generation, someone who is going to have to live with the consequences of the actions of their administration. But at the same time, every single one of these people are talking about extremely authoritarian policies. I'm pausing that. Well, I'm not pausing, I'm going to mute. Put into perspective, any sort of rounding up of people is literally what Israel is doing to Palestinians right now. Israel controls the entire Palestinian population. They are segregated to the point of not even being able to ride on certain roads. Their food, their water, and their electricity is controlled by Israel. What they are describing towards undocumented immigrants, Islamic nations, is the same exact thing. Furthermore, anyone that's detracting against them is also going to be targeted. This is literally the dog whistle that they are describing. They want a dictatorship. They want an authoritarian dictatorship. We already have a fascism. The ism meaning who gets paid, who's in control of the decision making. The dictatorship is who gets the final say. The authoritarianism is who gets the final say, right? And they want to be the emperor.
Governor DeSantis.
How inappropriate would it be to eat pumpkin pie on a live stream? Because I'm very hungry right now. I think I'm burning so many calories from just shock and rage. I just need to take a little nibble. Will anybody judge me for that? Obviously, I couldn't eat a slice of pie on a debate, but I kind of need this. And then they're fighting again. Me eating with my mouth full or talking with my mouth full and eating pie on camera is more adult-like behavior than what we've been seeing. It is pumpkin.
Father Time is undefeated. I don't know how he would score on a test, but I know this. We have an opportunity to nominate someone and elect someone for 2 terms who's going to be spitting nails on day 1 and for 8 years deliver you the result. We should not nominate somebody.
No, I don't. I also don't think Biden is fit.
To answer. No, you have no. You're afraid or you're not listening. No, it's not. It's a simple question. I read that.
I can't hear you. You finish.
All right. Look, I'm a simple guy. Okay? I hear the question and I answer it. Is he fit or isn't he? I'll concede you're fit, Ron. You're a new generation. You're 44 years old. I wish I was still 44 years old. Okay? 45. So, well, congratulations. I still say 45. Is he fit or is he? And this is the problem with my 3 colleagues. They're afraid to offend. And I'll tell you something. If you're afraid,
Oh, they are afraid to offend because what they're doing, and I'm going to lower Christy here. So obviously the other 3 are playing the long game. They want to remain in government and they want to remain in politics and they want to be a part of the administration that wins. And what they're hoping is that if Trump wins the nomination, which it looks like it will, even if I were on that stage right now, could I beat those 4? Absolutely. That's not even a question. I could make them look all childish and foolish and actually more cognizant and aware than they've been presenting. That's not the point. Could I, however, reclaim the 81% lead that Trump has? Probably not in one debate. But I also would not be attempting to try and get on his administration. Would I accept a position on his administration? Let's ask that question because that seems to be the unasked question here. If Donald Trump, as president, offered me, Samuel Ronan, a place on his administration, would I take it? The answer is yes, and I'll explain why. If I am not in the administration, I cannot affect change. If I am on the administration, I can be a vocal, outspoken antagonist of the administration in the places where I disagree, which would probably be 99.99%, except for whatever section I'm in or whenever he does decide to make a good decision. The difference is they don't have the courage or the fortitude to say that I will disagree with Donald Trump and that I will vocally disagree with Donald Trump. But if I had a position in his administration, I would do my due diligence and I would ensure that that portion of the administration would be run effectively and efficiently. That is the difference. Now, if I were president, would I forgive him? No. Would I support him if he became the nominee and had felonies? Absolutely not. I'm stating if, despite all that, he still said, fine, you want to make affordable housing, and you want to be in charge of HUD. I'll give you HUD, but you got to X, Y, and Z. I'll say, I'm not going to do X, Y, or Z, but I'll take your HUD. That's the difference. Or I'll take HUD, but understand that I'm still going to do X, Y, and Z. And you can either choose to accept that or not, right? That is the fundamental difference between those people on the stage trying to suck up, if you will, or at least not burn the bridge. And that is what Governor Christie was discussing a moment ago.
Issue to be the Republican nominee.
No, I'm not. Because Republicans believe in less government, not more. And less involvement with government, not more involvement in people's lives. And you know what, Megan?
Okay. So, what is big government? Let's just ask that question, and this is how I would answer it in 90 seconds. What is big government? Telling women that they can't control their bodies, telling brown people that they have to act a certain way, allowing law enforcement to act with impunity, not regulating guns, or improving mental health access, which is directly responsible for all of the active shootings that have been happening and the access to domestic terrorist events in our country. Is that big government? Or is big government expanding Social Security and Medicaid, taxing it all the way up, removing the wage cap on what pays into it, and facilitating access to healthcare, education, mental health care, and broadening access to housing, electricity, and, I don't know, transportation. And while we're talking on the subject, industry, by forcing it to actually pay back the profits that workers have been earning for them as part of the, the contract between worker and corporation. Which one of those sounds like big government? One sounds like authoritarianism as small government, catering to one ideology. The other sounds like empowering the American people by creating administrative processes that effectively function as a piggy bank that people can access as needed. What's big government?
You signed a law that required new guidelines for schools dealing with transgender students. Those guidelines required schools to accept a child's preferred gender identity, even if the minor's parents objected. And it said that there is no duty for schools to notify parents if their son or daughter changes their gender identity, allowing this serious issue to remain a secret between the school and the child. Was any of that pro-parental rights? By the way,
that's simply not true. That's simply not true. That's simply not true. That law was put into effect in 2018 and regulated in 2018 after I was in office. No, we did not, Megan. We did not issue those guidelines, and you're wrong about that. Simply wrong. I have stood up each and every time.
So I think if this is one issue, disqualifying is this one.
I stood up every single time for parents to be able to make the decisions for their minor children.
So here's the thing too, right? That law specifically stated about identity, not even transitioning, not even medical, whatever. Just, I feel like I am in fact a woman, and this is how I would like to identify. But if I go home and say I feel like a girl, I'm going to get beaten, accosted, or somehow verbally, whatever. So this law was actually a non-argument. Can minors choose to self-identify and test it out? Why is that a problem?
Because it is wrong. We cannot allow this to happen in this country. And I know Chris disagrees with me, and I think he has.
Okay, hold up. Hold on. I would actually probably interrupt at this point. This would probably be the first time, maybe not the first time, but I could probably not stop myself from just blurting out. He said, I do not approve of mutilation of minors. Why is it then that every single male baby in America gets circumcised? Is that not mutilation? Just, yikes.
Transgenderism is a mental health disorder. We don't let you smoke a cigarette.
Okay, and then, so, okay, in America, it's a mental health disorder, but in the rest of the known world, dating back thousands upon thousands of years of well-documented historical evidence of homosexuality, transgenderism, two-spirit, whatever, the whole 9 yards, the entire alphabet soup of LGBTQ plus IA. For thousands of years, we have been accepting this and tolerating it and integrating it and even venerating it in society, except for Western Europe, Western European society. For some reason, the church has such a stranglehold on this concept that transgenderism is unnatural and that homosexuality is unnatural, when the overwhelming evidence to the contrary in every other society throughout history begs to differ. It's just beyond me. Absolutely beyond me.
Ron continues to be. When he was running for governor and they asked him about that, he said he didn't think bathroom bills were a good use of his time. You can go look that up.
They're not.
Signed a bathroom bill in Florida, so that's obviously not true.
So the idea that you would say that I was against that.
You filled it. I signed it. I stood up a little girl. You didn't do it. And there was this going on. I was actually just in South Carolina. Some of the legislators told me at the time there were boys going into the girls. That's the whole reason why they did it. And so they say when she does that explanation that doesn't hold water. This is the upstate of South Carolina. I signed the bill. I protected the girl. He did not do it. I know that.
Do you know South Carolinians? I mean, honestly.
South Carolinians never allowed that to happen, and we did not have that issue at the time. What I have always said is boys go into a boys' bathroom, girls go into a girls' bathroom. But hold on one second. I also say that biological boys shouldn't be playing in girls' sports, and I will do everything I can to stop that because it's the women's issue of our time.
That's the women's issues of our time, not having the right to choose what to do with your own body.
When discussing your Hindu faith in September, you seemed to take a shot at Ambassador Haley, who is also Indian American and who converted to Christianity as an adult. You said, an easy thing for me to do, being a politician, is to shorten my name, profess to be a Christian, and then run. Make Vivek Vicky or whatever, end quote. Are you questioning Nikki Haley's Christian convictions? And why has your campaign made a point of referring to Ambassador Haley by her given first name, Nimrata, even though she has gone by Nikki for her whole life?
Well, my whole deal is if Nikki Haley, of all people, should know how to pronounce my name correctly, the rest of the news media can learn it. My deal is I'll call her Nikki when she can say my own name right. That's our little fun side bet there. Here's what I will say is deeper. I don't question her faith, but I question her authenticity. And I think that's deeper here. We were just talking about the trans issue. This is a symptom of a deeper cancer in American life, identity politics. This new religion that says your race, your gender, and your sexuality are your identity. It is anti-American. It is meritocratic. It's anti-meritocratic, and it is dividing this country. Not spoken about this to the left. My books are all about this. I push this to the left, but it's even worse than Republicans.
You all just transgender is a mental health thing. Queer people shouldn't do this. Kids shouldn't be able to do that. Let's circumcise our boys. And have the audacity, the temerity to say that identity politics is the problem when you are literally politicizing identity. Oh my God. What is this debate? What? I did that when Perez basically stole my entire talking points and couldn't follow through on any of them. Jesus Christ. What is this debate? What is this debate?
It's been a cancer coming from the left. I'm sick and tired of the double standards. The people of this country are too. Having two X chromosomes does not immunize you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Governor Haley, would you like to respond? No. It's not worth my time to respond to him.
You've been using identity politics in every step.
You're using identity politics now by highlighting the fact that she's a woman.
Now, by arrangement,
I would be so stressed. Well, actually, I am stressed. But could you imagine me having to like, don't get me wrong, I am trying to be restrained. I 100% am. But like,
have abused his civil rights for the last 8 years by, among other things, spying on him and now prosecuting him while having treated Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden with kid gloves. A recent Gallup poll shows that Americans think more highly of the U.S. Postal Service than they do the FBI or Justice Department.
as they should. The Postal Service is guaranteed.
For the state of the American people in these agencies.
Oh my God.
Well, first off, I'm the only person on this stage who's actually done a job in the Department of Justice. I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey and the 5th largest office in this country, appointed by President Bush on September 10th, 2001. And it was an extraordinary time in this country to be on the front lines of fighting the greatest attack against our country since Pearl Harbor. And I'm proud of the 7 years I spent in the Justice Department. And one of the reasons I am is because I had an Attorney General when I came in named John Ashcroft. And John Ashcroft stood up and told each and every one of us our job was to do one thing, to make sure justice was done every day, regardless of partisanship, regardless of gender or race or any other consideration. And that's what we did for 7 years. And at a time when our country was at its greatest moment of danger in the last 40 years, we did exactly that. And there was not another domestic terrorist attack on this soil. So what I would do as president, having had that experience, and the only one who's had that experience, is to pick an attorney general who will absolutely do the same thing that John Ashcroft did, to pick U.S. attorneys who will only care about making sure that justice is done without regard to any other consideration but the facts that are presented and whether someone is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and the government can prove it. We have had attorneys general like Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch and Jeff Sessions, and now our current attorney general, who have not met that standard. And the only way you restore people's faith in the justice system.
You mean the ones that have been prosecuting Republicans who have been committing massive state-level crimes? That's painful. Can we? Oh, shoot. I guess while that's... Sorry, that was my ADD coming in. I apologize.
And no ballot harvesting. We even have an agency that prosecutes people for violating election laws. The result of that, in both 2020 and 2022, we counted millions and millions of votes on election night, produced the results, it was transparent, and everybody was happy. That is not happening throughout this country. Let me tell you this as the nominee. I think it's important. Not every state's where we need it to be. There is ballot harvesting in places like Nevada.
Which is what Trump is on trial for. Committing actual crime.
We're harvesting. If there's Zuckerbucks, we're Zuckerbucks. We're going to exploit whatever the rules are. I favor changing the rules to be like Florida and some of the other states that have done a good job. But until then, we have to do it on the Justice Department and FBI. I mean, I remember being, in Iraq working with FBI on the ground and being out, and then I was a special.
Oh, so he was in the military. Okay, fine. I guess I can't say I was the only one serving.
What they did to Donald Trump with the Russia collusion was one of the biggest abuses of power in the history of our country. These agencies need to be cleaned out.
But see,
You'll have a new FBI director on day one. We're going to clear out the DOJ, the IRS, all these places.
Yeah, of course, the IRS. Yeah.
We're going to come back in 1 minute. China, up next.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So Needless to say, I would struggle to keep my poise. I'm not even going to argue. I'm not even going to deny it. I am telling you, as Samuel Ronan, the human being, I would struggle to not react visually or vocally to the actual misinformation and actual lies and actual cognitive dissonance that we just witnessed. It is difficult for me to wrap my head around the fact that they said those words and meant them, and without irony. Just, I don't even know where to begin. I don't, because they want to call transgenderism a mental health issue, and yet cognitive dissonance, the Dunning-Kruger effect, is that not also a mental health issue? Like, and a much more pervasive one? By the way, transgenderism isn't a mental health issue. It's biological. And it isn't an issue. Let me rephrase, or let me clarify, because it sounded like that's what I said. What I am stating unequivocally is that transgenderism is as naturally a part of the human experience as breathing, sleeping, mating, thinking, feeling. The human genome can naturally produce 3 X chromosomes, 2 X chromosomes, and a Y chromosome. The SRY gene, which dictates, ironically, no pun intended, male genitalia, can present itself in the X chromosome, which would otherwise allow a biological female with 2 X chromosomes to present male genitalia. Like, this is science. This is actual genetics. This is actual biology. This is literally how it is. And it has been a part of our culture, a part of our civilization for thousands of years. And to say that we're not going to allow our children to get mutilated, but then not addressing the fact that we circumcise boys at birth, and let's talk about the emotional castration that we integrate into our society. Men have massive emotional stunted growth, a complete lack of emotional maturity and intelligence. And I am guilty of it. I am a victim of that. I was raised to not cry. I was raised to not show and express emotion other than anger and joy. That if I cried, I was weak. And it's taken me years to even address that within myself. Obviously, I have empathy. Obviously, I can relate to other people and their struggles and their suffering. But in general, I find it very difficult to cry, even when I am moved by something beautiful. A sunset, for instance, that just over the horizon of the ocean. Beautiful. But I cannot be moved to tears, even if I feel the emotion of, wow, that is beautiful. That is stunning. And they want to talk about not mutilating our children. Meanwhile, they're not feeding our children. They're not giving our children enough time to sleep or think or act and play and rest during school hours and after school hours, because we are implementing these standardized tests which create anxiety and other mental health problems, forcing kids to bring homework home and not being able to rest, relax, and play. Because again, even in the workforce, once you go home, you go home. Oh, we're back.
3. We're going to talk about our college campuses, starting with you, Ambassador Haley. House Republicans yesterday hauled elite university presidents up to Capitol Hill to answer for the displays of anti-Semitism on college campuses. These leaders, including the president of Harvard, were asked whether calling for the genocide of the Jews would violate school policies against harassment and intimidation. All of them said it would depend on the context, including whether that speech veers into conduct.
How do you think these schools and the rest of society should balance the imperative of free speech against the need to prevent radical activists from harassing and intimidating others?
It was disgusting to see what happened. You know, if this had been the KKK that was doing protests on those campuses, every one of those college presidents would have been up in arms. This is just as bad. The idea that they...
I agree. Calling for the genocide and ethnic cleansing of Jews is reprehensible. And if that is what is happening, or if that is what has happened amongst some of those protesters, they should 100% be held accountable. Now, condemning Israel for committing genocide against Palestine is not only protected free speech, but is accurate. Let's be clear.
In the definition of anti-Semitism, if you don't think that so that every government, every school has to acknowledge that for what it is. The third thing is we really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. Let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more pro-Hamas based on doing that. We now know that 50% of adults 18 to 25 think that Hamas was warranted at what they did with. We're scared. We need to go to these universities and say, if you're not going to protect these students, if you're not going to acknowledge anti-Semitism, we'll take your tax-exempt status away. That'll fix it, and that'll take care of it for them.
So why don't we take away the tax-exempt status for Christian churches that are calling for ethnic cleansing and genocide?
Of the threat from Hamas. In fact, according to the New York Times, it even had Hamas as a attack plan and dismissed it as an aspiration. The Israelis were wrong. In our country, the FBI director told the Senate panel just yesterday that he sees, quote, blinking red lights everywhere, and that the threat level has, quote, gone to a whole nother level since October 7th. Which of the threats facing our country do you worry could blindside us?
What worries me and what keeps me up at night is what happens between now and Election Day while Joe Biden's in office. That's what worries me more than anything else. But I'll tell you that America...
I'm not going to lie. It's difficult to comment. Because how do you address the fact that Israel is committing genocide against Palestine in real time? How do you address the fact that Zionism is manifest destiny, and that was the justification we used to massacre and commit genocide against indigenous populations in our country, on this continent rather? And then you just want to give one of the greatest war hawks on the stage a laissez-faire opportunity to just talk about all of the existential foreign threats that we have and how to address them.
Taiwan, would you send American troops, as President Biden has said he would do?
We will be able to deter that from happening. I think that's the important thing. We need a strategy of denial so that we're deterring Xi's ambition.
What if it doesn't work?
It's going to work. Taiwan's an ally. We have longstanding American.
So the short answer is yes, I would. And I wouldn't just send one naval carrier. I would send the entire fleet. Then I would embargo the country. And yes, they are in fact a nuclear superpower, but China doesn't want a war with the United States. They don't want a nuclear threat. What they want is control of the region so that their trade can improve. So once you show a willingness of taking sufficient action against them, they will come to the table to talk about economic peace. And again, that's the point. For every action that can be taken with the military and force, you can equally or greater achieve through economy. But for the sake of the argument here, yes, I would use the military to intervene.
In Taiwan and put an AR-15 in the hands of every family and train them how to use it. That will give Xi a taste of American exceptionalism, end quote. The National Police in Taiwan announced a zero gun policy last year. Is this a serious policy proposal? And if it isn't, why do you keep repeating it?
Well, it's part of a broader deterrence strategy. And so I think I'm going to respectfully disagree with Ron here. I think the next U.S. president needs to be crystal clear that at least for the foreseeable future, the U.S. will absolutely defend Taiwan. And it is with that clarity that we actually achieve deterrence. But I have a broader strategy than that. We need to get on side in our relationship with India, take it to the next level. India has to be able to block the Andaman Sea, which is where China gets most of its Middle Eastern oil supplies. That's critical. I also do believe the Second Amendment is a critical.
See, this is frustrating because, like, he's making some valid points, but with, like, the most.
So it's part of a broader strategy.
How do you. Let's just give a foreign country a bunch of guns with civilians who have no idea how to fight a war or against tanks and bombs and heavy carriers. He's right. Give India the means to block the trade routes and you bring China to the table, but he's saying it so incorrectly.
Strengths in China. So it is our economic dependence on China that makes us scared. If that were a Russian spy balloon, we'd have shot it down in an instant. If that were a Russian spy base in Cuba, we'd be actually going hard on them instead of turning the other way as we are with China. So it comes back down to that economic dependence. We cannot depend on them for our pharmaceuticals, our semiconductors, and people have been lied to for a long time. Our own military, the F-35 jets that we make in this country, depend on China, and it's going to take an outsider to fix that broken establishment.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Ambassador Haley, would you like to respond?
I mean, when it comes to China and Taiwan, the one way that we keep China from going into Taiwan is, one, make sure that we win in Ukraine, that we protect our friends, but also let China know that they'll be held to pay if they go into Taiwan.
Yeah, let's just fight as many proxy wars as possible.
That force is going to go against them. And they need to know it's not just going to be the United States. That is why we need to build our partnerships with India, with South Korea, with Japan, with the Philippines, with Australia.
Let's build another NATO against China. Perfect.
Is we need to make sure that on day one, we look at the fact, if China pulled the rug out from under us tomorrow, would we be ready? Think about what happened during COVID. Everybody told you to wear a mask. They were made in China. Everybody told you to take a COVID test. They were made in China.
What actually happened in COVID was everybody was told to stay home for 2 months, and the American economy crashed because workers didn't work, making the trillions of dollars for other corporations because they don't actually keep cash on hand because it is a humongous pyramid scheme. You had a chance to actually address a real issue, and you blame China for it.
And I think they can only do that for themselves. But look, I want to be really clear. Once again, I want to play the role of actually answering your question, which is if China went after Taiwan, you're absolutely right. I would, as president, have us go militarily and defend them. Secondly, I'm not afraid, based upon those economic relationships, to do that, because these economic relationships mean nothing. Nothing. If what's going to happen is that China is going to come and act in that region of the world however they see fit. It's not right. And I'll say this about what I heard from Nikki earlier. He said that Donald Trump was good on trade. He wasn't.
He wasn't.
And the proof that he wasn't good on trade with China is that all he did was impose tariffs, which raised the prices for every American. You want to know what has contributed to inflation in this country? Yes, it's more government spending. Yes, it's the fact that we're printing too much money. Absolutely, but it is also the increase in prices that were driven by Donald Trump's tariffs. And one last thing.
No!
You can't say he was good on trade. He didn't say one Chinese policy.
The fact that corporations can just arbitrarily raise prices on goods is why we have inflation. Secondly, the fact that the Treasury decided to increase the interest rates ridiculously high made it impossible for people to spend, save, and invest. And the fact that, BlackRock and all these other companies are buying up residential property and increasing arbitrarily the cost of living which is driving up the cost of everything else, which is the literal definition of inflation.
You're not access to affordable health care. And it's not just getting some type of card and Medicaid, because a lot of times they don't even get access to doctors. You actually get access to care. The other thing is we have millions and millions of people who don't have access to good doctors and good hospitals. Florida did not expand Obamacare. I think the states that did that, I think are struggling financially. So that, yes, we declined to do that. And I don't think that that was the right policy to do. But we are going to go after the cost. You're paying too much for everything. We've actually addressed this in Florida in some ways, but you need price transparency. You need to hold the pharmaceuticals accountable. You need to hold big insurance and big government accountable. And we're going to get that done. I think it's very, very important economically. I think it's very, very important for the country that we get that done.
See, I forget the name of the act, but all you have to do is repeal the act that allows healthcare to be privatized in the first place.
A minute to recognize my wife who's here today. Badass surgeon. She did a bunch of cases with cancer survivors earlier today, flew here to be tonight. We'll be back at 7 a.m. in Columbus, Ohio tomorrow, taking care of those patients in the OR. And on the front lines of people who have actually not swallowed for years. And here's what's something that's awful that's happening in our healthcare system. They'll pay for anything like feeding tubes, doctors to be pill pushers, but for the procedures that can actually make these patients better, we have a broken healthcare system that doesn't pay for it. My wife, Apoorva, in many cases, does not get paid for those procedures. She does them anyway because it's the right thing to do. But that does not work system-wide. So here's the answer. We don't have a healthcare system in this country. We have a sick care system. We need to start having diverse insurance options in a competitive marketplace that cover.
It's like they dance around the point. They look at it straight in the eyes. They're like, universal healthcare is the answer, but what we're not going to do is do universal healthcare because we need to ensure privatization exists, even though I just said it is the problem.
The program protected the drug companies from virtually all lawsuits over vaccine injuries. The government has a program to compensate for such harm, but critics say it is a black hole of bureaucracy. 12,000 claims filed, 10% decided, only 8 payouts so far, in a forum with no right to counsel, no hearings, no appeals. Mr. Trump says he's very proud of Warp Speed. Should he be?
Well, this question specifically on liability goes back to actually Reagan. And Reagan is a president who I admire.
Whoa! What?
Reviving that in many ways.
Hold the front door. Did we just see a critique of Reagan on a Republican debate? That I would not have been able to hold myself back, folks. I would have been like this.
So I pledge this part of my legislative agenda. We will repeal that, just like we will repeal every other form of crony capitalism. People who have been harmed by those.
Wait a minute.
Deserve accountability.
Crony capitalism. So we're going to enforce profit sharing. We're going to deny capitalists from buying residential property. We're going to republicize or federalize, however you want to phrase it, the healthcare and education and water and electricity and the internet, which was developed by the military. We're going to make pharmaceuticals at cost. We're going to do all these things. Wow. I am impressed, Vivek. I am impressed. He's winning now. He's got my vote. We're going to become a socialist utopia, folks. He said it.
Government for 10 years. If you have been a government elected official doing deals with companies, be they Boeing or be they pharmaceutical companies, you should not join the board of that company for 10 years after. The former chairman of the FDA, the leader commissioner of the FDA, ended up on the board of Boeing. Nikki Haley did deals with Boeing.
That's corruption. Yes, we should address corruption.
We need some basic principles that end the corruption in government. That's how we got the health insurance exemptions. That's how we got the pharmaceutical product liability exemptions. We ended the corruption.
We need a reckoning for what this government did during COVID-19. That includes the mRNA shots. They put it out. It was experimental. People wanted it. Then the government started trying to mandate it to say you don't have a right to put food on your table if you don't take an mRNA shot that was under emergency use. They tried to take nurses away. Now in Florida, we blocked that. We provided protections for everybody so that they wouldn't lose their job. You also have the FDA approving an mRNA shot for 6-month-old babies. There was no data to support that. They're doing it because big pharma will make money.
So I'm going to go in there, CDC, NIH, FDA. We're going to clean house. There's going to be a reckoning because right now nobody's been held accountable for any of the damage. And they're going to try to do it again. When I'm president, this will never happen to our country ever again.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis.
Again, 50% there.
Closing statements from our four candidates at the Republican.
Oh, thank God. Thank God that's over. Thank God. I'm actually tempted to not listen to their closing statements because, I mean, I guess that's disingenuous. I just suffered through an hour and 48 minutes of that. Evidently, we could just at least, see it to fruition. What does Chris have to say?
University of Alabama, the biggest moments, what they need, all next on News Nation.
Oh, all he's doing is talking about the highlights that are coming up. So, I don't know what to say. This was perhaps one of the most terrifying moments in American political history that I have ever witnessed with my own eyes, my own ears. You have four people who aren't even close to becoming the front runner, spouting some of the most dangerous and disillusioned rhetoric, making policies and conveying policy positions that would either A, kill a lot of Americans, B, send us into many different types of conflict throughout the world, and C, be on the absolute wrong side of history on most domestic and foreign policy issues by literally advocating for discrimination on a basis, whether it's against transgender, against Muslim, against illegal immigrants. From the border, of course, not talking or taking into consideration the fact that most of the illegal immigrant that come into America are from Eastern Bloc nations, former Soviet. But because they're this color, it's not that big of a deal in the news. But because brown people are coming over the border from the South, fleeing our foreign policy, now it's a problem. None of those people are fit. Governor Christie is probably the only candidate on that stage that would not send us into World War III. I also believe Governor Christie is potentially the only candidate that would be swayed by social issues if they were popular enough in the country. Vivek should be nowhere near authority. The fact that he's a billionaire in charge of whatever company he runs is about as much power as he should ever have, and that's too much. Nikki Haley will take us into World War III. She is, however, probably the front runner out of those four. If I were ranking who did the best in that debate, who had the most knowledge and poise and what I would think presidential gravitas, it would be Nikki Haley. I don't like to say that, but Nikki Haley is a professional. She's experienced. She's knowledgeable. She's a tyrant, but most tyrants who succeed have those good qualities as well. I believe Governor Christie was the adult in the room, and I think he remains the adult in the room. And then you have DeSantis, who is, in my opinion, not much better than Vivek. He's proud of his discrimination policies. He's proud of his abuse of power. He's proud of all these things that he's done as governor that have been breathtakingly awful leadership traits. And then, of course, there's Trump. So, as far as I'm concerned, I believe Nikki won this debate. I believe Governor Christie is the best qualified of those candidates. And I apologize for the fact that I would struggle immensely to maintain my poise and bearing in that scenario, because I actually do care about this country. I care about each and every single one of you, and I don't want to drag us into a third world war or other conflicts with other nations when there are peaceful resolutions. And I think we need to address those issues that way. I guess we'll hear the closing
We're going to give
arguments.
you 45 seconds for this last one. Governor Christie, we're going to start with you. Which former president would you draw inspiration from for your own presidency, and why?
I would draw inspiration from Ronald Reagan. In the last year, I've spent a lot of time writing a book about President Reagan that's going to be called What Would Reagan Do? That book's going to come out early in 2024. And what I learned more than anything else was that Ronald Reagan was a slave to the truth. Ronald Reagan stood up for the truth, whether it was popular or unpopular at the moment. In 1964, he stood up against the John Birch Society when it was very unpopular in the party to do it, but he would not put up with our party standing for lies and deceit, even if it gave him political progress. That's the kind of president that I will be, and I would draw that inspiration from the 40th president of the United States, Ronald Reagan.
Ambassador Haley? Well, I have to say, too, I think George Washington, when you look at the responsibilities he had of how do you go and take on this great American experiment and make sure that the people are protected, and they always knew that government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. And then you look at Abraham Lincoln, and you look at the challenges, and you look at the division that happened in our country, and the ability to lead in spite of the loud noises and say, what will bring out the best in people to get us to go forward is always something that's important. And I think we need that now more than ever. Governor DeSantis.
Reagan, Washington, Lincoln, excellent. One of the guys I'll take inspiration from is Calvin Coolidge. And people don't talk about him a lot. What? Presidents that got almost everything right. He understood the proper role of the federal government under the Constitution. We need to restore the U.S. Constitution as the centerpiece of our national life. And that requires a president who understands the original understanding of the Constitution, who has a good sense of the Bill of Rights, and who knows how we've gone off track with this massive fourth branch of government, this administrative state, which is imposing its will on us and is being weaponized against us. So Silent Cal knew the proper role of the federal government. The country was in great shape when he was president of the United States. And we can learn an awful lot from Calvin Coolidge.
Over to you, Mr. Ramaswamy, to conclude our history lesson.
Sure. Well, I will say Ron picked a president who was born on July 4th. I'll pick one who died on July 4th. It's Thomas Jefferson. He was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. And you all were sitting on a swivel chair today. He invented the swivel chair while he was at it, while writing that Declaration of Independence. That's that founding spirit that we miss, that we're the pioneers. We're the explorers, the guy who sent him out on the Lewis and Clark expedition. And I think a lot about what would Thomas Jefferson say to today's Republican Party. And I think one thing he'd remind us of, we haven't talked about it as much tonight, but I think it is one of the interesting ideological discussions we're having in our party is freedom of speech. You get to express your mind freely, no matter how heinous the opinion. Thomas Jefferson understood that.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. And believe it or not, it's time for closing statements.
That wasn't the closing statements?
Thank you. I want you all to kind of picture in your minds election day. You'll all be heading to the polls to vote. And that's something that Donald Trump will not be able to do, because he will be convicted of felonies before then, and his right to vote will be taken away. You know, look, here's the bottom line. You could boo about it all you like and continue to deny reality. But if we deny reality as a party, we're going to have 4 more years of Joe Biden. When my colleagues here raised their hands and said they would support him, even if he was a convicted felon, the bigger problem with it is they were confirming the lies he's told to the American people. If you're too timid to take on Trump, believe me, others will see that timidity. Xi, Putin, and the Ayatollah, the border crossers on the southern border, and the criminals in our streets. They'll sense that timidity, and they'll take advantage of that failure of leadership.
You know, and I just said he was the adult in the room.
That every person is responsible for their own conduct, even a president. I'll be the kind of president who has the humility that knows that you work for the people.
He's the least dangerous one on the field. I'll give him that. I think maybe that's the thing. Governor Christie is the least dangerous candidate.
I'll use this to just address a topic we didn't talk about tonight, but I think it's one of the most important topics that needs to be discussed.
I swear to God,
That
if you
is
say
the
a
climate
portion.
change agenda that is shackling this country like a set of handcuffs. I said at the first debate, and I stand by it. The climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. That's what you have to see. 98% reduction in the climate disaster-related deaths in the last century. 8 times as many people are going to die of cold temperatures this year than warm ones. Yet against that backdrop, there's an issue coming up in Iowa. It's core to Iowa farmers. I met Kim Junker, Kathy Stockdale, and other farmers who are about to have a carbon capture pipeline built across their land using eminent domain to do it. That's unconstitutional and it's wrong. And if you thought COVID was bad, what's coming with this climate agenda is far worse. We should not be bending the knee to this new religion. That is what it is. It is a substitute for a modern religion. We are flogging ourselves and losing our modern way of life, bowing to this new god of climate, and that will end on my watch.
Thank you, Ambassador Haley.
Coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our country is in chaos. We see it on the southern border. We see it on our streets in our cities. We see it on college campuses. We feel it with our economy, with inflation and with debt. And we feel it around the world with wars in Europe and within the Middle East. We have to stop the chaos, but you can't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And that's what Donald Trump gives us. My approach is different. No drama.
Kill them all!
No vendetta. No wine.
Just kill everyone and everything that...
From illegal immigration and Chinese
Jesus.
infiltration. I envision an America where we unleash our economy and we reject socialism. But more importantly, I envision an America.
So you reject the military, you reject police, you...
Thank you. I crushed Joe Biden in the polls. And if you give me this chance, we will crush him in November and take our country back. Thank you, Ambassador Haley.
I can't even... Let's just hear it. Let's hear it.
Jeopardy of being the first generation of Americans to leave to our kids and grandkids an America less prosperous and less free than the one we inherited.
There's 2 generations, by the way, not one.
But we got to have people that are going to be willing to fight the people that are doing this to us. You can't be these establishment Republicans that just cave at the first sign of opposition. I'll fight for you. We also need to win again as a party. Yes, win the election, which we've struggled to do, but also win on these big issues. And nobody has defeated these people more than what I have done in the state of Florida on issue after issue. We have won and we have won big, and that's what we'll do for you. We also need leadership. Leadership is not about doing what's easy. It's about being willing to set out that vision, knowing they're going to shoot arrows at you. They're going to come at you. I will fight the good fight. I will keep the faith, and I will put in the race. Thank you, and God bless you.
And just race has changed. I do hope we hold this shot for a moment. Sometimes you get to learn something. You saw Governor Christie go up and shake hands with Nikki Haley. She seemed to say something nice to him. A little bit of an exchange with DeSantis, polite enough. Nope.
I think we're done with that. That was the 4th Republican debate, the last debate of 2023. And if nothing else, we can rest assured that if Trump is somehow disqualified from running for office, all of the core beliefs that these 4 candidates claim to hold against him will be carried out in some lesser or greater fashion. What we've noticed is that all 4 candidates have extremely xenophobic views. They have a complete disregard for the needs and plight of the American people. And when it comes to foreign policy, they are drooling, chomping at the bit to engage in conflict. The only thing I can really say in terms of redeeming qualities is that of those four, Nikki Haley would probably be the most effective president. She'd be the first female president, first Hindu, Indian, all the demographics, all the glass ceilings. She'd be that. Good for her. We would, however, be in World War III within the year. By the end of 2025, we would be at war with Russia and China, and more than likely Iran as well. Palestine will likely have been wiped off of the face of the earth, and who knows what other conflict might arise from that. Governor Christie, however, will probably be the most safe president. I think we would get Bush Jr., Bush Sr. I think that's the flavor of presidency that we would get from him. I think we would just get an administration that was conservative leaning. Social issues might take a hit. The economy, it's tough to say, but on foreign policy, we wouldn't be at war immediately. I believe he really would genuinely take the advice of his advisors and his cabinet and seek peaceful solutions if possible. So I think in terms of those four, or of the candidates that have been on television so far, who would I like to see in the Oval? Governor Christie. Who do I think won this debate and thus has a greater chance of entering into the Oval? Nikki Haley. I believe DeSantis and Vivek have proven their immaturity at the world stage, and they would not be taken seriously by some of the most powerful people in the world, such as Xi and Putin. Those two would eat DeSantis and Vivek alive. Nikki Haley has sparred with them on numerous occasions, and they know what to expect. And Governor Christie, I think, would probably put Nikki Haley back into the ambassadorship or some role to fence the Putins and the Xis and the potential adversarial conflicts. But I was not impressed with any of those candidates, and I do not feel that any of those candidates would actually benefit Americans and resolve our issues. It's ironic, though, that Vivek came extremely close to talking about universal health care. But then, I forget if it was Nikki Haley or Vivek who turned right around and said that we're going to eliminate socialism, when every government program is socialism. It's in the name. And I'm not saying that socialism is the solution, right? Because socialism, as a definition, is social programs where people benefit the most. Communism is the same thing, but ran by the state. And capitalism is where the benefit goes to the corporation, and fascism is where the corporation and the state merge. And in fact, I will go ahead and Google the word socialism, just so we can have the textbook definition. A political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole, which I believe is what I said. A purely socialist government wouldn't work in the United States. And the reason why is because we have billionaires and we have multi-billion and trillion-dollar corporations. What we can, however, do is implement regulation against those industries, which would then facilitate social programs. Having a balance isn't a problem, right? Having a socialist portion of the government, a communist portion of the government, and a capitalist portion of society or the government is not necessarily the problem. It's the fact that right now we have no regulation in capitalism because we are fascist. And again, for the sake of argument, fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology and movement characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition belief, and a natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual interest for the perceived, and I guess this keeps going on, good of the nation or race, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. Which is, I mean, authoritarianism. It is not, where's the phrase where it said it's the merger of the, so here we go. Let's merger. It was Mussolini who said it was the merger of the corporation of the state. Of course, I don't know how to spell Mussolini. All right. I just want to make sure that when I paraphrase fascism, that I'm doing it correct. Here we go. The creation of a nationalist dictatorship to regulate economic structure and to transform social relations within a modern, self-determined culture and the expansion of the nation into an empire. So, some unique elements been criticized, too broad, too whatever else. Okay, so Wikipedia is not helping us. The point being, fascism does devolve into ultranationalism, and we have that. You heard it. We need to get rid of the illegals. We need to get rid of Muslims. We need to get rid of X, Y, and Z. We need this pure American race. Sound familiar? So, in closing, because I need to do my due diligence as well and start heading to bed on top of that, I am going to do my utmost to end up on that stage as early as possible in 2024. I need your help and I need your support in order to get there. What we witnessed and what we are seeing in our government is this trajectory towards fascism, to true authoritarianism. All of those bad isms, we are getting there. And you can tell by the way this administration, the Biden administration, acts, and you can tell by the way these candidates are portraying themselves. They're using fear, they're using xenophobia, they're using nationalism, and they are trying to center their views, their policies around an us versus them strategy, and we need to be united against this exterior threat. None of them are talking about actual solutions to the actual problems in our country, which can be and must be resolved by simply expanding the programs that are in place, enforcing the regulations that are in place, and expanding them. If we simply enforced profit sharing, mandating that 50% of all profits must be redistributed to the workforce, we would resolve many of our economic issues. If we made healthcare public again, to include pharmaceuticals, we would remove the #1 cause for bankruptcy in America. If we made education free and accessible, like it once was, we would eliminate the second largest cause of debt in America. And addressing the housing crisis by making it illegal for non-citizens to own more than one residential property unless they can prove that they are purchasing property on behalf of next of kin or family members. We can also address the housing crisis. That's not big government. That is holding privatization accountable. Crony capitalism, if you will. These are the things that we need, and they are building. They are things where we unite and work together, that we can achieve together. That's what we need in this country. That's what we need in our president. And I am the only candidate who espouses these values. So please share, please like, please do all the things that you do on social media. Let's get the word out there that there is a candidate that is going to fight for the American people and bring Thrive back to the American people. My name is Samuel Ronan. You can find me at samronan.com, and my socials are Sam for President and Sam for President 2024. Thank you and have a great evening, folks.